Looks like we are. Oh, wow, so frustrating. I'm trying to go live on three different platforms, and one of them just errored. So give me one quick second. I'm trying it again. Let's see if I can get this. But hello, everyone, to those of you that are in my Facebook group and on YouTube. So glad to be here. And okay, let's try it one more time. And if not, then I just won't go live on that platform. Oh, it's not working. Okay, that's okay. So, hi everyone, Kimsey Berkwin here. I am so excited to be here today for our weekly live talk. So I stream on my in my Facebook group, Holistic Solutions for Mental Health and Wellness. I also stream on YouTube and my personal Facebook page. And on YouTube, for some reason, the past few streams have cut me off early. Like one cut me off after not even 3 minutes. Another one, I think, cut off the very end. So if you're watching this on any of those platforms and there's a glitch for some reason, I am a solo person, meaning I do not have a tech team. It is me on my laptop in my office pulling up to go live. And so that is the extent of my tech troubleshooting. So if there's a glitch and you're not able to finish the content, or there's a problem like in the middle of it, or you want to catch the end of it, whatever it might be, or you want to make sure to have access to all of it, please check out one of the other platforms that you are watching on. The most consistent is going to be my Facebook group, Holistic Solutions for Mental Health and Wellness. It's a free group, it's private. I archive all of the talks there, like they're organized. They're pinned to the top, the most recent ones. So that's going to be your best bet if for some reason you're watching it somewhere else and you're not able to, see the whole thing. So just putting that out there because I don't know why. Like right now, I tried to stream on my Facebook page and it's not letting me, so I just give up. But anyways, so happy to be here. My name is Kimsey Berkwin. I'm an integrative nutritionist in my online practice, nutrition and wellness practice called Progressive Health and Wellness, where I work with ambitious men and women who are struggling with their mental and physical health by taking a root caused body mind approach to optimize their overall health and wellness. And a big thing that I work with often are women going through menopause. Sometimes that's what's bringing them in. They've started noticing symptoms like some of the classics, right? Hot flashes, night sweats. But sometimes it's like fatigue, brain fog, mood changes, weight gain, joint pain, less physical endurance. So it's not as obvious that that's connected to menopause. And arguably, I would say menopause is just a piece of it if that's what they're experiencing. Ultimately, and this is a theme that you'll notice, including in today's conversation, but in my talks as a whole, is hormones are a symptom or a symptom. Hormone imbalance, specifically, I should say, hormone imbalance is a symptom. So, what I mean by that is hormones are, and I'm talking all of them, right? Thyroid, insulin, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, what we'll be talking about today. They are so responsive to our internal and external environment that when they become imbalanced, it's usually a result of something else, something deeper: stress, the gut microbiome, nutrients, liver detox, whatever it might be, inflammation. So we want to support that, right? The body as a whole. And then oftentimes the hormones come into line on their own. If not, we've got a solid foundation that we can build upon. And then we usually do just a few tweaks, and that will get the hormones more on board and more in a balanced state. So that is also how I view menopause. But I am going to go specifically today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens in the menopausal transition, and then I'll talk about some of the key ways that you can support your body, both going into menopause. So, ladies in your early 40s or so, late 30s, like this would be a great thing to get started with, like now. And then obviously, women that are starting to go through it. If you're starting to get irregular menstrual cycles, or let's say you've gone 6 months without having a menstrual cycle, but you haven't hit that 1 year mark where you're officially in menopause. And then, of course, if you're already in menopause, all of this is going to um, apply to you as well. So let's first talk about what's happening in menopause. This is a very high level overview. Okay. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it all, but this is a very high level overview. So, the ovaries in menstruating women, so during women's reproductive years, the ovaries are in charge of producing the two main female sex hormones, which are estrogen and progesterone. And I should say, to clarify, estradiol, so when we say estrogen, there's actually three estrogens. So there's estradiol, estrone, and estriol. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So specifically, I'm talking about estradiol, which is the most potent form of estrogen, and it's the most prevalent in menstruating women. Estrone is more so produced by the conversion of androstenedione into estrone, and that's done by fat cells, by an enzyme produced by fat cells. And then estriol is kind of the last stage. Estradiol can be converted into estriol, and then estriol goes through the hydroxylation pathway and is eventually detoxified through the liver. So the ovaries are the main producers of estradiol in the reproductive female body. Progesterone, same thing. Ovaries produce progesterone, specifically where ovulation took place. So the follicle that released the egg during ovulation, that follicle then starts producing progesterone. Again, this is in menstruating reproductive aged women. Testosterone, so women have testosterone just like men have estrogen. Some of the testosterone is produced by the ovaries, some is produced by the adrenal glands, and some is produced by fat cells. I'm sorry, take that back. I was getting the androstenedione mixed up. Ovaries and the adrenal glands primarily. What I was thinking is fat cells can also convert testosterone into estradiol. That's another place that women will get estrogen is from fat cells, just like fat cells can also convert androstenedione into estrone. Okay, so nonetheless, that's primarily where female sex hormone reproduction or hormone production occurs is in the ovaries. In menopause, the ovaries are really and truly biologically with the transition of menopause, the intention of it is to no longer reproduce. So we will no longer ovulate, and the lack of ovulation interferes with reproduction, right? And the lack of ovulation will start to affect our menstrual cycle, and it will also affect our hormone balance. So, as I just mentioned, if the largest source of progesterone in menstruating women is from what's called the corpus luteum, which is where the follicle was released, if we're no longer ovulating, it's obviously going to affect progesterone levels. So, one of the key transitions that happens in this time is the ovaries pass the hormone producing baton to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are the walnut sized glands that sit on top of the kidneys that produce a number of different hormones. There's um, the like corticoid hormones, there's the adrenocorticotropin hormones, there's the mineralocorticoid hormones. So adrenaline, like epinephrine, some norepinephrine, um, cortisol. They also produce aldosterone, which is a mineral corticoid. So the adrenals already produce a number of different hormones, and then they take on that added role, if you will, of producing the sex hormones in that transition into menopause. The way that I explain this transition and how that one of the biggest areas where that system can start to break down is when the adrenals aren't functioning optimally. So I've given other live talks where I bust the myth of adrenal fatigue. That's not really a real thing. What happens with dysregulated cortisol production, which is the whole basis of adrenal fatigue, is something called cortisol resistance. So the brain, due to excessive production, basically chronic stress, so excessive production of cortisol, the brain, the pituitary specifically, becomes desensitized to cortisol. And that will start to influence the circadian rhythm, the appropriate circadian rhythm. However, we will see changes in DHEA. So, DHEA and pregnenolone, those are two precursor hormones that are produced by the adrenal glands that will then trickle down into the production of progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. And so, if there is any kind of chronic stress, and I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute, that can interfere with the body's reserves and resiliency, especially particularly from a nervous system perspective, and therefore the balance of and the ability to produce adequate levels of progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen. I'm also going to talk about how, like, different ways that hormone imbalance can manifest in menopause. I think oftentimes people assume it's just low, right? Everything's low. I no longer have any hormones. My estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all those things are low. And that's not always the case. So we'll talk about some different patterns that can show up that can lead to symptoms in menopause. So basically, the baton can fall. So the ovaries are trying to pass the baton to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands don't catch it. And that's one way because they're overwhelmed with other forms of stress. And that's one way that menopausal symptoms can start to show up. But I'm going to share, like I said, some other ways that menopausal symptoms can show up that's independent of adrenal dysfunction. So, one pattern is estrogen dominance. So, high estrogen in comparison, the ratio to progesterone. One is higher testosterone. So, a woman with PCOS, for example, or insulin resistance going into menopause can have higher testosterone. And then, of course, the third way, which I'm not really going to talk about because it's so, I mean, I guess I kind of just hinted at it, but the third way is low levels of hormones. So low estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone. And that tends to be the more common way that people tend to think of menopause, as I was just saying before. That's where we would go back to that adrenal gland piece and the what different kinds of stressors is that woman experiencing, particularly going into menopause. That could be chronic inflammation, it could be blood sugar dysregulation, nutrient deficiencies, chronic emotional stress. It could be, oh, there was a big one I was going to share. Darn it, totally just slipped my mind. I'll have to come back to one of the other big ones that can over-exercising. That is often something I will see that can contribute because part of where that comes from is women start gaining weight and they're trying to lose weight, so they're exercising excessively, and so that can also affect the, hormone balance and cause a lot of hormones to be low. Okay, so going back to the other two patterns, estrogen dominance. Estrogen and progesterone need to be an ideal ratio. So, estrogen is a very active, proliferative hormone. Progesterone is more calming, soothing, and anxiolytic. They balance the activities of each other, which is why their ratio matters. So, with estrogen dominance, that can involve either normal levels of estrogen to low progesterone, high estrogen to normal progesterone, or high estrogen to low progesterone. So, one of the biggest things, culprits that I see in causing low progesterone in women, three: chronic inflammation, chronic emotional stress, and nutrient deficiencies. So, with nutrient deficiencies, we're looking at things like iodine, which is really important for all glands, not just the thyroid, um, iron, vitamin D, selenium, zinc. Um, Copper could be one, essential fatty acids, protein. Those are some of the key magnesium. That was another big one. Those are some of the key nutrient deficiencies that we would see that can contribute to low progesterone. Inadequate sleep, poor nutrition. So again, not nutrient-dense nutrition, eating higher carbs, a lack of protein. Um, yeah, and then I mentioned, the chronic emotional stress and chronic inflammation. Those are big drivers to low progesterone. When it comes to estrogen, I'm going to speak to high estrogen in particular. With high estrogen, one of the biggest, if not the biggest thing that I look at is liver and bowel function. So with estrogen, when we use so like we produce it, then we use it, and then we want to lose it. We're going to lose it through the liver. In phase one, that's the hydroxylation pathway. There's 3 different pathways that estrogen can go down to be appropriately detoxified. One is great, one is mediocre, one is not great. It produces a more carcinogenic form of estrogen. So which pathway and those ratios is important in the function of phase one as a whole. And then phase two, we're looking more at the sulfation, the methylation, glucuronidation pathways. And so how both phase one and phase two are detoxifying estrogen really matters. Our nutrition plays a role in this. Our protein intake, our nutrients like B vitamins and magnesium, for example, sulfur compounds. Our nutrition really plays a role in our liver function as a whole, and gallbladder really plays a role in how our estrogen is being appropriately eliminated. It's kind of like if you have a bathtub, your body's going to keep producing estrogen, right? So you've got the faucet turned on, but if the drain isn't open, the tub is going to fill up, right? So we want to open the drain adequately. Bowel health matters for that too, because if estrogen gets detoxified through the liver, it dumps into the bowels, and then it's eliminated in bowel movements. But gut microbes can produce an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase that causes us to reabsorb our estrogen instead of eliminating it in the stool. So gut microbes plays a big role in our estrogen balance. And then constipation or diarrhea. Constipation or diarrhea will negatively impact our ability to effectively clear the estrogen from the bowels and predispose us to, again, reabsorbing it. So, and then I also look at environmental toxins. So chemicals that mimic estrogen, they're called xenoestrogens, parabens, phthalates, things like that. They're all over the place. Detoxifying your environment becomes very important, down to like scented candles. There's like Teflon, nonstick cookware, plastics, personal care products that contain phthalates or parabens, and a host of others, fragrance. Um, yeah, there's a ton of different xenoestrogen sources, non-filtered water, because there's remnants of hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, and birth control. So there's a lot that can go into the xenoestrogen component as well. But that has actually been shown not only to negatively impact our liver detoxification, it's been shown to upregulate our own production of estradiol. So xenoestrogens are very much a real threat when it comes to our hormone balance. So that the estrogen dominance pathway, or not pathway, the estrogen dominance pattern is often overlooked with menopause, especially by doctors, not intentionally. I think the overwhelming narrative has just been the problem with menopause is low hormones. But I've worked with women that have high estrogen, and that's driving a lot of their symptoms, especially like weight gain, mood issues, sleep issues, joint pain, IBS type symptoms, fatigue, brain fog. That can really come from the estrogen dominance side. Okay, talked about high estrogen, low progesterone, talked about low hormones across the board, and then the high testosterone piece. So with high testosterone, we would typically, I would say most commonly see this in women that have been diagnosed with PCOS going into menopause. They may go into menopause with high testosterone. And it doesn't always have to be PCOS, right? There's 3 criteria that a woman would have to meet to be diagnosed with PCOS. High androgens is one of them. And it's not just testosterone, it could be DHEA or androstenedione. But if a woman has high androgens going into menopause, That doesn't necessarily stop, right? Especially when we consider that it's generally inflammation and metabolic imbalance, blood sugar imbalance that drives that high androgen piece in women. If that's occurring going into menopause, that doesn't, like I said, necessarily stop. And that can continue. There may be shifts, the hormones might be not as high, but that metabolic and inflammatory piece will continue to dysregulate, disrupt the hormone balance in the form of high androgens in menopause. Now, what are the different ways that you can support your body going in menopause? I'm going to share 4 key ways. One is deep nutrition. 2 is supporting your metabolic health. This is huge. 3 is strength training. And 4 is stress management. So, first, nutrition. Actually, I'm going to lump the deep nutrition and the metabolic flexibility all together. So, last week, I gave a full talk on Metabolic Health 101, what it is, how to, like different ways to support it. So, I'm not going to go into deep detail about what metabolic health is right now, but I am going to piggyback on some of the things I shared last week and then layer on some additional ways. So, metabolic health is, in short, the shortest definition is how efficiently your body converts the energy from food into its own energy, ATP, its own energy production, right? So, how we create energy from food, basically, and how efficient that is. So, we're looking at mitochondrial health with this. We're looking at insulin and blood sugar balance with this. These are some of the big key things that we're looking at. If we're going into menopause nutrient void, which can be very easy if you're eating a standard American diet or anything close to that. So, nutrient void and metabolically imbalanced. So, we're seeing high insulin or reactionary hypoglycemia. This is a recipe to have a horrendous menopausal transition. There's going to be a higher likelihood at weight gain. I mean, I can share just a few key things as to why. One, iodine is going to be one of the easiest things to become deficient in. The best food sources of iodine are seafood. So if you're not eating a lot of seafood, it's already going to be easy to become deficient. Iodized salt, we only absorb like 10% of the iodine in the salt anyways. Not to mention iodized salt sucks because it's just potassium, or I'm sorry, it's just sodium chloride, like those two minerals, as opposed to the wide range of minerals that are found in like pink Himalayan salt. Um, so don't think just because you use iodized salt, that means that you're getting all your iodine. That is not the case. And iodine is so important for all the health of all glands. In fact, in women, the ovaries actually contain the highest concentration of iodine, not the thyroid. So very important, very easy to become deficient in if you're not eating a very well-rounded, whole foods, nutrient-dense diet, especially one that includes seafood. But then there's other minerals, essential fatty acids that can affect our hormone production, that can affect our gland health, ovarian gland, ovarian health, adrenal health, pituitary health. So a number of ways that nutrition will impact the transition into menopause. And then also looking at metabolic health and insulin levels. I mentioned insulin will, for one, increase androgen production in women. That production can also offset our estrogen balance, so promote estrogen dominance. It also high insulin will lock us into fat storage mode. So this becomes kind of a vicious cycle because with higher insulin, a woman is more likely to gain weight moving into menopause. But I can also be like kind of a protective and self-fulfilling prophecy because if the adrenal glands aren't adequately catching hormonal production, the body will build more fat stores because fat produces estrogen from the conversion of testosterone or androstenedione into estradiol and estrone, respectively. And then high estrogen promotes weight gain. So then it becomes this, vicious cycle. So not to mention, there's new evidence coming out that's really interesting that's shedding more light on how those sex hormones and specifically the transition into menopause will affect our insulin sensitivity. So there's a relationship between estrogen and insulin sensitivity, and low estrogen will reduce our insulin sensitivity, so make us more insulin resistant. So if you're going into menopause already insulin resistant, that can really aggravate that, throw a flame onto that metabolic storm and really contribute to the weight gain, the mood changes, the insomnia, the brain fog, the thinning hair, the joint pain that a lot of women experience. And it can be connected to the hormone imbalance. But again, we have to go backwards and appreciate that the real root, if you will, is more at that metabolic piece and nutrient piece. Okay, and then step 3, actually, I'll say, um, strength training. Strength training ties into this metabolic piece and bone health. So one of the best things that a woman in menopause can do is strength train, because strength training, it will preserve your muscle. So muscle loss is common. It will increase the amount of mitochondria in your muscle, which will help with that metabolic piece to help keep you more insulin sensitive. It'll help with weight management and bone health. So osteoporosis, osteopenia is a common complaint. Um, Estrogen has a protective role with bone health. So when there's less estrogen, the bones can suffer. Strength training is one of the best ways to keep bone strong. The more stress you put on the bone, the more it signals to the bone to build to compensate for that stress. So strength training is a wonderful thing to incorporate. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? You can do like a 15-minute HIIT workout and be using resistance of some kind, bands or weights or machines, whatever it might be, body weight to start, and then work up to some kind of resistance training. But anything, 15 minutes, short as that, you can go up to 30 and take some exercise classes if you want. So many different methods. There's YouTube videos, there's Peloton app, Peloton bike that uses weights. So there's many different ways that you can get this in, but I would really encourage like 4 days a week, ideally, of strength training for all the reasons that I just described. And then lastly is supporting your liver health. Liver health will be critical for maintaining the estrogen balance and hormonal balance as a whole, for that matter. So the liver health will be huge. Some of the easy ways that you can go about it is detoxifying your environment. Switch to non-toxic shampoo, like personal care brands. I love Desert Essence for shampoo, conditioners, soaps, lotions. Oh gosh, I don't remember what the makeup line is. It's something minerals on Amazon for makeup. They make an incredibly clean makeup line. It's great. Um, get like ceramic cookware, especially if you're using Teflon or nonstick. Filtered water. I love Aquasana filtration systems. They're very affordable too when it comes to the world of filtration systems. So no scented candles unless they're non-toxic. So just start detoxifying your environment. That can really go a long way. And then you can also start cleaning up the diet, eating as much organic as possible, lots of green leafy vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, chard. They contain sulforaphane, which supports our estrogen pathways. Garlic, onion, same thing. Um, lemon and ginger help with the limonene that helps with the liver gallbladder pathway. Bitter herbs like dandelion. You can drink like nettles tea, green tea. All of those are wonderful things to add into the diet. And essential fatty acids and protein. So it's another big one is getting enough protein. Not only will this support your muscle mass, but phase 2 of liver detoxification is amino acid protein dependent. So this will also help your blood sugar and it will also help your liver. Um, I say aiming for, if you want to aim for like 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. So take your weight in pounds, divide it by 2.2. That'll get you kilograms. And then that's the amount of protein in grams to strive for each day. Easy rule of thumb. And then you can consider supplementation like milk thistle, super safe. It would be a go-to. B vitamins are really wonderful for the liver and important for metabolic health and hormone health too. Um, Vitamin D, let's see, N-acetylcysteine is another good one. So there's a few things, green tea and green tea extract that you can consider for supporting your liver health as well. All right, everyone. I should have mentioned too, the most common, so when we think of like hot flashes, night sweats, some of the two biggest menopausal culprit symptoms, that's often caused by low estrogen. So with low estrogen, and ways to support low estrogen. I'm thinking, how do we support the body's stress response and essential fatty acids? So, meditation, um, heart rate variability, biofeedback training, breath work, adequate rest. So, exercise is great, but adequate rest as well. I'm also thinking about essential fatty acids like omega 3s and flax oil, flax seeds. What is that? Evening primrose oil and dong quai can also be really therapeutic. And then adrenal support like ashwagandha, um, rhodiola, medical mushrooms, not like hallucinogenic mushrooms, like lion's mane and things like that. Um, astragalus. Okay, I think that covers it. All right, everyone. Hope that helps. Let me know what you think below. What hormonal symptoms are you experiencing? How did your health change during the transition into menopause? Let me know and let me know if you have any specific questions and I'll make sure to answer it. Okay, thanks so much for watching and for being here. I'll see you next week. Bye.